Can you believe that we are almost halfway with the book? Mila insisted on saying hello. It's way past her bedtime. It's 10 to 10 in the evening. It's the second day of school tomorrow, so their sleep patterns are still a little bit upside down. Anyway, she just wanted to wish us good luck for our halfway mark. Taking her cat with her, I see there. So we here with the chapter Ayla, the beautiful Ayla. And before we start, I just wanted to say that this unfortunately will be the last free video. In the next video, I will explain to you exactly how you can go about purchasing the rest of the book, all the videos, plus the notes that go with it. The good news is that it will not cost you an arm and a leg. It will cost you about just more than the price of one extra lesson, maybe 1.5 extra lesson, depends on where you are. If you're in Joburg, it's 1 extra lesson. So you'll get all of these summaries for the price of 1.5 extra lessons. So I think that's very reasonable, and I hope it helps you, and please share it if you have found this valuable. It really, really helps me in ways that I can't even explain to you. Chapter 32, Ayla, halfway, almost halfway. Xander neem vir Greg en Plank na sy huis. They've landed there in Turkey. He takes them to his little flat there that looks out over this fascinating setting that we will find ourselves in now. This is this lake, yeah. Okay, this massive lake, the Heilig, I think that's how you say it. It's this massive lake in it's also called the Bosporus. It's one of the little bays that you find in this absolutely magnificent lake, and their flat looks out over this lake. They finally meet Ayla. Okay, impressive, formidable character. Okay, the females that we meet in this book are impressive. The least impressive is probably Greg's first girlfriend, and a close second would be his mother. His mother's a fairly undeveloped, weak kind of character, but the goddesses, the criminal females that we meet in this book are very kind of impressive. Okay, Ayla would probably be a favorite character of a lot of our female readers, a lot of the matric girls reading this. Ayla is quite an impressive character, I think. So if you want to talk about her as your favorite character in your oral, that would be pretty cool, I think. When Greg meets up with them, he kind of hints towards that time in Jeffreys Bay where Xander seemed to have an interest in his girlfriend, right? I don't want to give it away, but we kind of found out a little bit more information about that later. It's not what it seemed to be. However, it puts Xander in quite an embarrassing situation. He's like, oh, you don't want to like bring up previous girlfriends with my current girlfriend. And Greg finds quite a bit of pleasure in Xander's discomfort in that moment when they meet. Anyway, Ayla speaks Afrikaans because her dad was a South African, right? Okay, so she tricks them a little bit in the beginning, and she pretends that she doesn't understand, but she does. Okay, Ayla weet van Greg se pa en vertel hom dat haar pa 'n dokter is. She's quite like straight up with the whoopsie. Got a bit of a lag there. She's kind of straight up with him and says, I know your dad's in jail. She knows the whole story. She doesn't pretend that she doesn't know what's going on. And she says her dad is a doctor and that her parents met through Doctors Without Borders. Okay, now keep that in mind because it might seem insignificant, but it becomes like a point of interest, I would say, later in the book when they are trying to, it's hard not to give it away here, but when they're looking for the baker, obviously they're looking for people with medical background who are connected with them. Okay, and this later puts them on the suspect list and also puts Ayla on the suspect list as being the baker. Okay, it's a bit of a spoiler, but I'm sorry. Dit lyk of Ayla iets weet, maar sy sê niks verder nie. So the narrator very skillfully puts little thoughts in our head, okay, by mentioning things like, oh, Ayla looks like she's like not saying something that she knows, and then makes us think, like, what is this girl on about? You know, what is she thinking about? Greg, not Gref. Greg is skeptical, so she is skeptical about the lemonade that they get poured, because they're very suspicious. Okay, the distrust and the mistrust between these characters are intensifying rapidly. Okay, so much so that when Greg, he waits for Plank to take a sip and see if something happens to him before he actually sips of the lemonade. He doesn't know if he can vertrouw is trust. He doesn't know if he can trust Xander ever. Chapter 33, Prometheus. Okay, interesting title. We'll get to that now. There he is. There's the dude, okay, with his flame. All right, and his beard and long hair and big muscles and six-pack, and he's obviously a god. You can see that. He's built like a god, certainly. I don't know why they must always show off their six-packs. If I looked like that, I would do it too, probably. Anyway, Xander wil weet wat hulle alles van die baker weet. So, hey, they're kind of sitting down now. They say, listen, let's get to the point of things here. You guys are here for a job. We need to sit down and find the baker. Hy waarsku dat hulle niks moet aanneem of aanvaar nie. This is I like this part. Accept nothing. Don't assume anything. And that's good in the world of crime. You don't want to assume anything. Like, for example, Greg calls the baker he. And Xander's like, why are you assuming that it's a male? Okay. Why are we assuming that the baker assigns to any gender, I suppose, nowadays, eh? We don't know. People identify as anything and everything. So why are we assuming? Xander wil ook weet wat Greg se rede en motief is. He's like, it's also important. So Xander's clever, right? He's probably, his fluid intelligence, I would say, is smarter than Greg. But Greg's intuition is pretty sharp as well. Okay, so let's not sell him too short there. But Xander wants to know, what is Greg's motive? Why are you looking for the baker? Is it for justice? Is it? And I don't know why it made another bullet there. That is absurd. There we go. And the feeling we get is that Greg wants to do it for the name and reputation of his family and his father. And then they argue. And this is an important argument, I would say. It's the first time the book really addresses this issue of whose father is to blame by the largest extent. Who's the most guilty, in other words? Okay. Tot watter mate, to what extent are they guilty? To what degree are these two guilty? Who's the guiltiest? So Greg's dad, obviously head of Turret Media. So his job would have been make people aware of this virus and that it's killing people. And secondly, then make people aware of the cure of the virus so that they buy the antidote and that they make a lot of money. Xander's dad accepted a bribe money from Doc Pinor and from Greg's dad. Okay, as being in the position of a judge, and then he wanted to back out. Okay, so that's the kind of argument. But Greg's saying, listen, your dad accepted a bride. Okay, and we still don't know. It's not clear whether Greg's dad was directly involved in the murder of Xander's dad. Okay, according to that video, he's not. Okay, but let's not assume. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Obviously, Xander gets quite angry with this argument. Eventually, he calms down for the sake of making progress in their search for the baker. It's a trigger point for both of them. They're both very sensitive when it comes to their fathers. I think like most boys would be. So now they kind of go about according to what they know. Because Xander, he testates in Clarence, when they met there in Clarence, he said that the baker was a virologist, maybe a doctor, maybe a chemist. Okay, so it had to have been someone with that kind of knowledge. Greg now starts spilling information that he has tracked down thus far in his hunt for the baker. He tells Xander of Dr. Trollop. Okay, that was his first suspect, remember, that he was caught for something else. You can remember what it is. I can't say it in a video on YouTube, otherwise they will block me, okay, and block my monetization, so I can miss out on my 7 Rand for the video, and I can almost buy a beer with 7 Rand, okay, 5 Rand short. Xander dink die baker het Tom laat doodmaak. So Xander saying the baker probably had Tom murdered. Remember, Tom was Xander's hacking buddy that they found there in the river. And then Greg was like, hang on, Xander. Remember, there's this mistrust, this distrust. You were in Stellenbosch at the time of Tom's murder. Isn't that a little bit of a coincidence? Like, I don't even trust you. Okay. Xander, of course, defends himself. It wasn't him, right? And he says Tom was his friend. Okay. Now, this is important. Okay, so Greg tells Xander everything that he knows about the people following him, his mother, his visit to jail, everything, just like he told Lisa's dad, right? The cop. But he leaves out a critical piece of information. Important information. Nothing about the burnt book with the yellow pages with all those little formulas and weird little names in. A piece of evidence that he probably hasn't spent enough time on or paid enough attention to. He doesn't say anything to Xander, like he doesn't fully trust this guy, right? So there's still this wall of distrust between them. The next morning, they're kind of stuck that evening. They're like, we don't know where to go. Xander tells Greg again about Prometheus. Okay, it's a story he's told him before. I kind of left it out. I didn't think it was going to be super important, but it keeps occurring, so I put it in. So Prometheus was the stealer from fear. He stole fire from underneath the noses of the other gods. He got caught, okay, and then he got tied down by Zeus, okay. He got tied down by Zeus, and a massive eagle would come every day until eternity and eat Prometheus's liver. Imagine that. And every day his liver would grow back, and the next day the eagle would come and eat nice god liver. Okay, like this. It's the ultimate kind of torture. All right. I just pulled it off Wikipedia there. I think in Greek mythology, Prometheus is one of the Titans, the supreme trickster. Interesting. Okay, I found that interesting. Supreme trickster, a god of fire. In common belief, he developed into a master craftsman, and in this connection, he was associated with fire and the creation of mortals. His intellectual side was emphasized by the apparent meaning of his name, the forethinker. Okay, so we can see that there are clear parallels here between Xander and Prometheus. Okay, both are crafty. Remember Xander's social manipulation, his intellect. He's clearly smarter than normal people. Okay, and he's clearly the kind of one that would steal something from underneath your nose, like fire. He would hack into your business and take your information or take your money. Not that he does that, but he could. Anyway, Xander's plan the next morning then is that they are going to visit the dark web, to visit the baker. What is the dark web? I had to just read a little bit about it. The dark web is part of the internet that isn't indexed by search engines. You can't Google stuff. Okay? There's no Google on the dark web. Most of it is criminal activity. You've no doubt heard talk of the dark web as a hotbed of criminal activity, and it is. The dark web is part of the internet that isn't visible to search engines and requires the use of an anonymizing browser called Tor to be accessed. Okay, so it's anonymous. It's where you can find really shady and dodgy stuff. Okay, Donker Web, chapter 34, almost halfway through the book. The first chapter that carries the title of the actual book, Donker Web. Okay, is this important? Well, it turns out to be a little bit of an educational chapter on how the dark web works. Not really. It's yeah, the Tor looks, there's their logo. It actually looks like that. How does Tor work? Each layer of the onion represents a level of encryption, exit nodes. Listen, you're not going to have to know this, right? But let's just go through it anyway. Xander verduidelijk vir Greg hoe die donker web werk. 2 million people use it every day. That's not a lot, right? What are we, 6 billion people on the earth? That's not a lot of internet users, man. That's like there are more than 2 billion people using the internet just in this half of my town, Pietermaritzburg. And it's called the Sleepy Hollow. Okay. Op die donker web is almal anoniem. Everyone's anonymous, and they know this is the party ground for guys like the baker. Dark people hang out in dark places, or evil people hang out in dark places, right? This is where they're going to have to search for him. Okay, so perhaps that's the most important part of what you can take out of this chapter. Anyway, you use a VPN. Some of you might be familiar. I've used a VPN before. It's where you never drop internet, right? A VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network, establishes a digital connection between your computer and a remote server owned by a VPN. So you online via an internet thing that never switches off. So if you have if your power trips and you drop internet, people like gamers use it, I think, and people who trade and they can never lose internet, they use it. Okay. Anyway, they try a whole lot of different VPN companies. There are literally hundreds, and they use NordVPN, and then they install Tor. So Tor network is your browser. It's like Chrome or Firefox. In fact, it looks a lot like Firefox, they say. I don't know. I've never been on the dark web. Maybe it's worth a look. Hulle installeer Tor network soos Google. So yeah, and then Xander educates Greg on a few rules. Download nothing. Okay, if you download stuff, it'll be full of bugs and viruses. Switch off your camera, switch off your microphone, switch off Java. Don't use add-ons. Your computer will never be the same again. The dark web is also very slow because the connection is bouncing around between like 2,000 different servers that are hosted by private people, something like that. Okay. Websites are called onions. Okay, and websites don't have addresses. They have like 16 letters and numbers all mixed up. It doesn't make any sense, and it ends with .onion. Okay, so layers and layers and layers. Also feeds into this theme that we have of the normal world, the dark world, the internet, the dark web, the above water, underwater, the conscious, the subconscious, the truth, a different version of the truth, good and bad, all layered concepts, right? The Hidden Wiki is a place you can go for some kind of index for different onions, for different websites where you can find stuff if you want to search. And Greg, Xander leaves Greg to look around a little bit, to surf a little bit. Okay, Greg finds a whole lot of things. False money, you can buy false money, you can buy licenses, you can buy guns, firearms, and a whole lot of other really dodgy stuff. Okay. Chapter 35. Planne in die donker. Plans in the dark. Plonk is a little bit bored, right? So when they're all on the dark web and they're surfing and kind of looking for the baker and doing stuff that Plonk doesn't understand, doesn't want to understand, because he's probably high most of the time, right? Doesn't expressly say that he's smoking while in Turkey, I don't think. But anyway, he meets a guy called Xander. He pops up a little bit later, so we'll just take note of him. He made a friend at the vegetable and fruit sort of shop. Lots of those there in Turkey, sort of in that Mediterranean sort of vibe. You get lots of fruit and veg. And then Xander is bang dat Plonk inligting. Xander's like, why are you talking to people? Have you lost your mind? Your accent will stand out. You will attract attention. You can't be talking to people, yeah? I hope you're not saying anything about me. And he takes Plonk's cell phone and destroys it, then grabs his SIM card and destroys that as well. And Plank's devastated because the only thing that's really been keeping him sane through all of this was his contact with his girlfriend, right? Lisa, who he really likes a lot. And Xander explains to them, listen man, an app on your phone can monitor all your movement. Okay, it's not safe. Xander bring 'n notaboekie uit terwyl so they sit outside buite and they sit and kyk oor die meer. And they're like brainstorming now. As they're sitting there, Greg kind of looks at Ayla and how beautiful she is. He really admires her. And Plonk, he's like, I see what you're looking at. I can see where you're staring. Fortunately, Xander doesn't see it. Okay, so there seems to be a little bit of although there's no indication that it's reciprocated by Ayla. It's only coming from one side. Okay, so now they set up a profile for the baker. What do we know? What do we do? Maybe he's a chemist, maybe he's a doctor, maybe he makes vaccines, maybe someone like that. We know that he's bereid, is willing to kill for money. Maybe he has experimented or done tests on animals. And it's different people chipping in here, Ayla and Plonk and Xander and Greg. Maybe he's been involved in previous projects, right? Okay. Maybe he makes drugs, maybe he makes medication. That would explain all his contacts in the prison system. If you give a prisoner drugs, they'll do anything for you, right? Okay. So what they want to do is they want to bait him. A loquas is a bait. Okay, they want to lure him out of the deep, dark water and trick him to give away his identity. And the plan that they have is this. They're going to pretend that there's someone looking for input into a new shady project that will involve someone with those skills. Okay. Hulle dink aan idees. So they think, okay, so what exactly can it be? It can't be something as obvious as, oh, we want to make a virus. Okay. Or we want to make an antidote to a vaccine to a virus. That's not going to work. It's far too obvious. So Xander reads about graphene. Graphene was the thinnest materials ever made. It's also used to make biomedical sensors. It's self-repairing. It's very, very thin. Maybe something they can make up a project for someone who's willing to make that. They also read about Pandora virus. Look, with the ice melting, there's like viruses popping out of the ice that are extremely old. The Pandora virus was very big. I think they've found a few since then. Some of them are, well, the virus is not really alive, but they're still infectious, right? So the ice melts, and then something that was on the planet 500,000 years ago pops up and kills us all. So anyway, that's the thing. That's the story. Okay, die geheim van die gebrande boek, the secret of the burnt book. Remember, this is the one thing that Greg did not tell them about. All cards on the table. They've even come up with a whole profile of the baker. Yet Greg, and I don't know what he's thinking, but he didn't tell them about the burnt book. So when he's showering, he gets out and he sees his clothes all strewn across his room, and he's like, oh flip, we've been robbed. He looks for his passport, he finds that. He realizes die gebrande boek is weg. And then suddenly Xander and Ayla are there. She chucks the book, sy gooi die boek op die bed. She's like, yeah, you want to tell us about this, buddy? Okay, Greg maak of dit nie belangrik is nie. He's like, no, it's just a book. It's just a notebook. And Xander's not stupid, right? He obviously had a look through the book, quickly Googled some stuff. There were some words that we didn't understand previously. Now we kind of get the full names of these things. And Xander knows now that there are some of the world's deadliest chemicals. Okay. It was a biopreparat, I don't know what the English is now, but it's bio stuff, okay, biological or prepared matter that was used by a Russian agency that made biological weapons. It was called Project Coast, okay. It was used in the apartheid years. I don't know if this is true. I don't think it's really true. But the apartheid government was certainly up to all kinds of horrible things like this. Okay, Peroxon. So that's the short for oxon. I think it's stuff. It's a matter that doesn't, or a chemical substance that doesn't show up in autopsies. And when it does show up, it shows up as parathion. And parathion is an agricultural poison. So people will just be like, oh, he probably ate some cabbages that had poison on it and he died. But meantime, he was poisoned. Okay, so remember the apartheid police, the secret police, were actively involved in taking out terrorists, so-called ANC Mkhonto Besiswe terrorists, with all kinds of ways. Okay, Project Coast was one of those things. Sodium oxide, one of the other things, is a explosive material, a plofstof. It's also very, very poisonous. You basically ignite from the inside and you die extremely quickly. Another one of the things was mandrax, right? quite a popular drugs in the townships, and so the apartheid government would make mandrax available freely, or almost freely available in the townships, because if you want to subdue your enemy, you drug them, you make them addicted. Okay, there's method behind the madness of the apartheid regime trying to hold on to the racist white government that was part of it, especially in the 80s, early 90s. Okay, some horrific, Vlakplaas comes up later in the book, some horrific things, and they're starting to kind of see, maybe this person worked for Project Coast. It makes him seem South African, maybe, probably the baker. And Greg says he also doesn't know who sent the book. We do find out later, though. Okay. Obviously, Xander is extremely upset that Greg didn't tell him about this book, because it contains a wealth of information and almost doubles their list of a profile of who the baker could possibly be, and sends them down quite a few avenues of evidence. Anyway, that brings us to chapter 36. This ends our last free video. In the next video, chapter 36 or 37 to the end of the book, which is chapter 68. Okay, there's another one after that, so 69 chapters. You can purchase that. I will show you how to do that. It will not be expensive, and I hope that is worth it and worth your while. I'm really trying my best to help you out and make things really, really simple for you. Okay, awesome. We'll chat soon, and hope the year is going really well for you.